It's another beautiful day for baseball in Los Angeles. And baseball podcast. Josh Schaefer and Blake Harris cover everything Dodgers right here on Inside the Ravine.
How is it going, everyone? And welcome to a very, very special, crossover edition of Inside the Ravine. This is going to be a fun one because there's a huge series this week, not only for the Dodgers, for potentially clinching the NL West, but for the team they're going to be facing because, in case you guys haven't looked at the standings, the Seattle Mariners are not only in the wild card hunt, they are in the division hunt as well. So this is an episode that's probably been 5 or 6 months in the making. Joining me, two guys that Josh and I both know personally. TJ, Lyle, co-host of the Marine Lair podcast. So first off, gentlemen, I'm glad we were able to make this happen. I think we talked about this back in Arizona in February, that we'd have to make a show once these two teams played each other all the way at the end of the season. So welcome on. I'm also, I guess I should introduce myself to all the Mariners fans listening. I am Blake Harris of the Inside the Ravine podcast. But how we doing, boys?
Good, Blake. You did mention that this weekend's big, but the Dodgers also have a chance to clinch this weekend. Where are they going to go celebrate? There's no pool. There's, they can go jump in the Puget Sound. Actually, that's only counting if the Dodgers win a game this weekend, which, we don't know yet.
I was going to say there is the scenario where the Dodgers just get swept, but because other teams in the division might help them, it might be like the third inning on Sunday. Dodgers are down 5-0. But they might have just clinched the division, so we might have a very boring celebration if that's the case. Maybe they'll go take the underground city tour in downtown Seattle. Maybe that's how they'll celebrate.
Did you ever do that, TJ? I don't think I've ever done the underground tour.
Oh, I've done it multiple times. True
Well,
Seattle.
I've done it. I don't even live in Seattle. I've been there once, and I've done it.
Maybe I did it when I was really young and just don't remember. Yeah, I don't know. I just have no memory of it. So maybe when I was way younger, we did an underground tour, but where is it again, TJ? Is it like
it's in
Capitol
Pioneer
Hill?
Square? In case you didn't know, Lyle, the old city burnt down, so they built an entire new one on top of it. Oh, and the old one was flooded as well. So they needed to raise it up a little bit,
Whew.
But
the more you know.
They not teach that in Kirkland Public Schools?
Yeah, maybe I'm not culturally versed on my own city. The more you learn.
I think I've done the underground city tour, and I've probably visited more Starbucks in Seattle than Lyle has. And again, I've been there once in my life.
Hey, what do you think of the original one?
It was cool, but I'm also like Lyle. I don't drink Starbucks for different reasons, but I choose not to drink them.
And then you get to the original one and you realize that it's the exact same one as the one 2 blocks away that's nicer and less crowded.
Yeah, and then the one that's 2 blocks past that, and then the one that's across the street from that. So
if you really want to go to a Starbucks, go to the Reserve. Go to the Reserve. Yes. It's actually nice.
There you go. So we're going to have a lot of Dodgers talk, a lot of Mariners talk, a lot of random talk that's probably going to go down over the next course, of 60 minutes or so. But guys, the first thing I want to talk about, and again, if you're a Mariners fan listening, you probably already know this, but there's going to be a lot of Dodgers fans that are going to be tuning in that probably haven't been following the Mariners at all this season. Like I mentioned, they might not realize that this is a Mariners team that not only is fighting for a wild card spot, but is fighting for a division spot. I mean, as of right now, I think they're it's like the Astros and the Rangers are all within 1.5, 2 games as of September 14th?
Yeah, 2 games, 2.5 games. I mean, or to be exact, if you you pull up the standings, or it's a game and a half. So the Mariners are a game and a half out. Texas is 1 game out. Houston leads.
Yeah, so the Mariners are right in there. Again, if all goes well for them this weekend, the Dodgers could be leaving NL West champs, but the Mariners could also be leading the division. So guys, just for the Dodgers fans out there listening, what is it about this Mariners team that has them so close to being a first place team, that has them so close to winning their first division title in 22 years? So what exactly has been clicking for the team this year?
I think we could just start with the guy on Friday. I know he made headlines a week ago on Friday when this releases. George Kirby, after the game against Tampa Bay, said some things he probably shouldn't have, but as we realized when he said he didn't want to go out after 90 pitches and throwing 6 innings, that any rational baseball person would probably think, yeah, that probably happens weekly in Major League Baseball, where some guys, especially this time of year, don't want to go out there and throw. But George Kirby's been he has been an ace this year for what the Mariners have needed. He's given them distance. He's given them, 98, sitting 98, lowest walk rate in baseball, 4 elite pitches that he commands at all parts of the strike zone. Your only knock on the guy is that he doesn't strike enough guys out, but really that's it. I mean, he's taken such a second year leap, and it's really been one of those key parts of a rotation that's been such a nice revelation that they've lived up to the billing. It hasn't just been Kirby, it's been Luis Castillo, who's billed just an absolute ace as well. And Logan Gilbert has taken a very nice step forward with his off-speed pitches this year. He's also chewed up a ton of innings and been very effective at limiting walks. The Mariners are best team in baseball at limiting walks, but I would really say it mostly ties back to the rotation, Blake. I know the Dodgers have had a lot of trouble staying healthy in the rotation, and the Mariners have the same, but those 3 guys at the front, Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, George Kirby, they've been healthy throughout the season, and they've been there when the Mariners have really needed it the most.
Yeah, I think it all ties back to the starting pitching. You look at those 3, and if you're going to set up a playoff series, it is going to be those 3 aforementioned guys. But the fact that they've had rookies come up this year and not miss a beat has been, I think, the biggest difference maker, because you lost Robbie Ray in his first start of the season. You lost Marco Gonzalez during the summer, who, look, Marco Gonzalez isn't an ace, but he is an innings eater, and he was throwing productive innings. The fact they've had 2 rookies step in, and Ryan Wu and Bryce Miller, and essentially be not just good, but better than those guys that they replaced, that's been the big difference, because you can't just lose every 2 of 5 games and get into the playoffs. Those guys have been awesome for being just rookies, and Ryan Wu's on a pretty short innings limit too. So for what they've done, combined with what the big 3 have done, there's a reason this group's a top 5 starting rotation in baseball. And honestly, you could argue even higher up than that.
And I would think, Blake, I would think that the Dodgers feel kind of similar in that retrospect. They've also had some young guys like Bobby Miller and Gavin Stone, as you mentioned, really step into that rotation. Ryan Pepio over the weekend come in and really perform. And I think we'll see some of that young talent on both sides this weekend.
I mean, the thing I was going to mention real quickly was you were talking about the starting pitch. I know you guys, when you were talking about Shohei Ohtani, a couple of weeks ago, one of the things that Lyle was talking about, especially why you don't need him to necessarily pitch next year, is because the Mariners' starting pitching depth is absolutely insane. Like I think Lyle said, they can go like 7, 8, maybe 9 deep with so many guys that are absolutely loaded. And again, like you mentioned, there's a couple of guys they've gotten essentially no production from this year. So what the Mariners have done with the starting pitching, watching from afar, has been crazy. But like you said, TJ, kind of the same thing with the Dodgers. I don't know how many rookies, I mean, I could probably count them on 20 fingers, have come up for the Dodgers this year, but like Ryan Pepio, he has exceeded expectations. Bobby Miller's exceeded expectations. Emmett Sheehan, a guy that they called up straight up from Double-A, didn't pitch a single inning in Triple-A. He came up, I think he took a no-hitter like into the 6th or 7th inning in his first career start. And a couple other guys that have really come up and had to eat innings for the Dodgers because there's been a plethora of injuries. So I guess, yeah, starting pitching for the Mariners, that's been a big takeaway. One thing I wanted to tell you guys, and I don't know if you guys have the same thoughts on this. Yesterday, I was going through MLB Reddit, as I do every day. I just like to keep up with that kind of stuff. And there was an interesting thread. And someone did a thread saying, you're starting a baseball team today. You have the first overall pick of a massive draft. Who are you taking? And for some reason, I don't even know why this is. My initial thought when I thought about this, you guys might like this, was Julio Rodriguez. I didn't think of Ronald Acuna, who a lot of people had in the comments as their guy. I didn't think of Shohei Ohtani. I didn't think of like Adley Rutschman. I didn't think of all these young starting pitchers. For some reason, my first gut instinct was Julio Rodriguez. Now, for a lot of non-Mariners fans, they might not realize, they might have just tuned out, at the All-Star break when they saw his numbers at the All-Star game. Had it not been for Shohei Ohtani, had it not been for Corey Seager's incredible season he's having, Julio Rodriguez would probably be right at the top of the MVP conversation. So I want to hear from you two guys about what it's like seeing Julio on a day-to-day basis. And do you think he's exceeded your expectations that you set for him at the beginning of the season?
We joked and thought it was a down year, really. As soon as the trade deadline hit, we were sitting here still kind of waiting. And I think the message we kept pounding through is that the Mariners weren't going to turn around until Julio did. And then he spent the month of August hitting over 400, and not just 400, WRC plus above 200, which we like that stat way more than batting average. I know you do too.
I do too, TJ. I love that stat more than batting average. My co-host probably wouldn't agree, but I agree with you.
Yeah, well, where is he to fight back? Where are you at, Josh?
Unfortunately, with the Ontario rain.
Okay.
But he's in Vegas, so he's probably actually having a pretty good time right now.
Oh, I don't doubt it. We're big fans of Vegas on this podcast. But we're sitting here, in September now, and the Mariners starting pitching, again, as we mentioned, has been just so key into them winning games. But they didn't start actually winning and climbing back into the playoff ranks until Julio started being Julio and really igniting this offense. It's just such a different offense when Julio Rodriguez is doing everything he does. And if you think about this, Blake, I mean, the dude is built like almost like a tight end. He's 6'3", he's 230 pounds, but unlike a tight end, the dude is one of the fastest players in baseball. He's one of the best center fielders in baseball, on top of his, now 30-30 power, the 44th player ever to go for a 30-30 season. It's really special. The hit tool is there. I mean, he strikes out a little bit too much. He doesn't walk quite as much as a Juan Soto would. He doesn't cut his strikeouts down as much as a Ronald Acuna does, but he really just hammers the baseball and he hits it a lot. That dude's special. And the most important thing, I mean, he's always got a smile on his face.
Who else would even be in that conversation for a startup roster with one player right now? You could probably throw Corbin Carroll in there. You can probably throw Acuna in there. I don't even know if I throw Soto in there because he just doesn't play any defense. It's probably those three?
Yeah, I was going to say Juan Soto, but the fact that he's probably going to be a full-time DH starting next year might kind of limit that just a little. But yeah, I mean, I think, maybe those couple, like a lot of people had Adley Rutschman on the list just because he's probably the best catcher right now in baseball at such a young age. But yeah, when you take into account Julio's age, his production offensively, defensively, I mean, he's electric, like you guys said. I think you can make the case for Julio. Like I said, that was the one that came to mind, not Acuna. Maybe that's because I'm a little salty right now about the MVP race, but Julio was the guy that if I was building a team around, like I got the first overall pick, I'd be taking Julio.
What'd you think about Mookie for that, Blake? I mean, that dude is aging like fine wine.
There's a certain guy that lost his job today with the Boston Red Sox, and I got a feeling the Mookie had a small part to play in that. So
just a little bit. Just a little bit. Good thing all those prospects are working out.
Right? Hey, man. Connor Wong's looking great.
Yeah, do the Dodgers still need another outfielder? Verdugo might be on the trade block.
Oh, boy.
I saw today Verdugo almost got sent to the Yankees at the deadline for Clark Schmidt. I don't know if you guys saw that tweet.
Yeah, is that even a good deal? Is that a good deal?
I don't think so. Although, that would not have been a good deal. I want to transition a little bit since TJ just brought it up. Where are we at in this Mookie Acuna MVP race? I mean, I'm guessing you're on Mookie's side, but do you think this thing's going to be as close as it seems from afar right now?
So I will say this, guys, because you do have a segment later in the show called Speak Your Mind, and I may or may not be saving this little MVP discussion for that. So I'll leave that as a little tease for those that want to make it to the end of the show for a Speak Your Mind segment, because I do have some things I would like to say, and I'd love to hear your guys' opinion on that. So I say we save the bad boy for that one at the end, because I'm looking forward to it.
It's been so incredible watching Mookie, though, this year, because I was clicking through a Savant page today, looking back at his 2018 season, which might be the best modern baseball season of all time. And that includes all of Mike Trout's seasons, by the way. That 2018 Mookie season is an absolute spectacle. But this year as a hitter, he might be better than he was in 2018.
Right. I mean, his numbers across the board, like, honestly, I mean, they're all career highs. And essentially, I think as of right now, I don't have them in front of me. I want to say his like WRC plus, his OPS plus might be like 12 or 13 points lower than what that MVP season was. But the fact that he's hitting home runs at the rate he's hitting, I mean, from a guy that's seen Mookie Betts face to face, this guy is tiny. Like, he is a little guy, and the fact that he's going to be able to hit 40 homers, drive in 100 runs, if he wanted to steal more bases, he easily could. But with Mookie Betts, I think the biggest thing is the fact that he's doing this while being probably the most versatile player, like in all of baseball. The fact he's playing right field, second base, shortstop, like I think it's just incredible. So yeah, the fact that Mookie Betts, who you said, TJ, had probably one of the greatest seasons we've seen in quite some time a couple years ago. I think his WAR that season was like 11 or something like that.
10.5 on Fangraphs.
Yeah, and I think
and by the way, you were right. He's 11 points of WRC plus off that season. 174 right now. He was at 185 in 2018. But in 2018, he was also the best defender in baseball as well, and one of the best base runners, which is hence the one of the greatest modern seasons ever. Because Fangraphs, Baseball Savant now. I saw you point this out on your Twitter page, and Lau and I talked about this on the podcast as well. Really loving the new layout of Baseball Savant, not just having the bubbles, but having hitting run value, fielding run value, and base running run value. And Mookie Betts was in the elite in all three in 2018. That's pretty difficult to do across the board.
Yeah, Baseball Savant is just like the amount of times, I don't know if you guys do the same, when I'll just look up random players just to see what their charts look like and just see some random, like I was looking up Luke Raley, who was a Dodger winner 2 years ago, and he's like 90th percentile in all these different categories. And I'm just like, come on, man. Where was this when you were a Dodger? Where, a casual fan, they wouldn't, know the difference. They wouldn't know because of those advanced ones, like my co-host. But I love Savant, like you said, TJ. The new features they have where it's like your hitting value, defensive value, base running value. I mean, it's incredible. So yeah, Mookie, the fact that he's been almost as good as he was that season, it blows my mind, because there were Dodgers fans that were getting very upset earlier in the year when he had an OPS of 700 about 10 games into the season. So there you go.
There's a story that doesn't get talked about enough. The fact that just on a whim, they said, hey, Mookie, can you fill in at short? Can you fill in at second base? And he's just done it flawlessly.
Yeah, no, he takes, BP the last couple of years, he takes BP at second base at shortstop, and you're always like, okay, it's kind of for fun. And then, yeah, a couple of months ago, I forget when it was exactly, but pretty much Dave was he was talking to in his pregame scrum, and he was like, yeah, Mookie, he's going to be, because I think he was on the paternity list, and he wasn't, he didn't play for a couple days, and he was like, yeah, we expect Mookie back. I forget exactly how he said it, but then one of the reporters was like, wait, can we see Mookie Betts at shortstop maybe? And Dave was like, well, he's getting reps there today, so we'll see how he feels tomorrow. And then Mookie was at shortstop the next day. So yeah, the dude can do everything. I mean, he bowls 300s. I've seen his basketball highlights. He's incredible. I wouldn't be shocked if he could be like an all-pro punt returner in the NFL. So if the dude needs to play a new position, he could probably pitch for you, and he'd probably be able to give you 2 earned runs over 6 innings, and I wouldn't be surprised.
Well, at the end of that contract, they'll need him to do something. I don't know how good he's going to still be in the field, but usually they let the older guys pitch. So that's why it's a good thing you sign a 12-year contract?
Something like that. And I think with his deferrals, he'll be getting money up until like 2050. Like Bobby Bonilla Day will still be going on in 2050, I'm sure. But Mookie Betts Day, when he's getting about 15 million, that'll hit different.
Do you think any of us can retire before his deferrals stop?
Hey man, if our podcasts keep going the way they're going, maybe we can.
Yeah, you bet it. I have one more thing here. We're talking about Mookie so much, but Mookie's been the best player on the Dodgers this year. The second best player on the Dodgers this year was already a Hall of Famer with the Atlanta Braves, Freddie Freeman. When he left Atlanta, I think he was pretty much a Hall of Famer at that point. If he had retired, he was almost certainly in. He's come to the Dodgers now as a free agent, and he's even better. Like, is this more just Dodger like pixie dust? What is he eating? Is he going to Airline for breakfast every day?
I don't know what they're serving them. I don't know what they're serving them in the clubhouse, but whatever it is, it's working because, yeah, all the talk that Mookie Betts gets, for having a career year, but Freddie Freeman, like any other season without Mookie and Acuna, would be like the runaway MVP because the numbers he's putting up are crazy. I mean, I think as of right now, I want to say he's like 6 or 7 doubles away from being like the first guy to hit 60 doubles in like 70 or 80 years. I mean, he's right there in the batting average race. I think he's a few extra base hits away from setting the Dodgers franchise record for extra base hits in a season. And I mean, there's so many great players in baseball. Again, we talked about like Julio, Acuna, Juan Soto. They're all great players. But when it comes to Freddie Freeman, maybe it's because I'm able to watch him on a day-to-day basis. I think he's the best pure hitter in baseball. And I say that because he's one of the toughest outs. He can go the opposite direction if he wants to. He doesn't look for homers. But again, if he wants to hit a homer, he can. I think he has like 25 this season. it really is incredible watching him at the plate, and he'll hit pitches that are so far out of the zone, and it's an absolute treat. And like you said, TJ, he was already as close to a lock as you could be for a Hall of Famer when he left the Braves. But what he's doing with the Dodgers now, I kind of jokingly talk to people about this, but it's kind of not becoming a joke anymore. If Freddie Freeman kind of continues on this trend for the next couple of seasons, I don't think it's that hot of a take to say when he goes into Cooperstown, he has the split cap on. Because if he has 5 more seasons as a Dodger the way he's currently trending, I mean, it would be one of the best tenures of a career anyone's ever had as a Dodger. So it's been incredible watching those two at the top of the lineup. But I think there was an article about a month ago that pretty much outlines how they're currently having like the best 1-2 punch season we've ever seen. So yeah, although Mookie gets most of the love, the season Freddie Freeman's been having, it's just absolutely insane. And what I think like year 11, year 12 for him, something like that.
Then the Braves replaced him with someone who's going to break their single season home run record. But, that's just the Braves.
They cannot keep getting away with this with 1% donated to the Atlanta Braves Foundation. No.
Okay. So did you think the Dodgers were going to be this good at the start of the year? Because at least from an outsider's perspective, I mean, I'd like to say I'm pretty much a baseball nut, just like TJ is, just like you are. But just looking at the Dodgers from afar, I mean, you obviously have the 2 table setters, and then you have Will Smith. But then you look at the rest of the roster, especially after the Gavin Lux injury. There was no point where I ever said, oh, the Dodgers are going to miss the playoffs. Did I think they were a slam dunk to win the division? No, but here we are yet again. So, did you always keep your faith?
It was tough because one of the things I talked about prior to the start of the season was the fact that the Dodgers won 111 games last season. And I thought it was crazy. Although they lost so many players to free agency, like you said, the Gavin Lux injury, I felt it seemed really hard to believe that this could be a team that could be 20, 25 games worse than they were last year, which would still, again, have you as like a high 80 win caliber team. I did have a bold prediction prior to the season starting that the Dodgers would win 100 games that actually at the time sounded absolutely crazy. But I said that as a bold prediction, but in my heart, I didn't truly believe it. I thought this would be a team that could potentially win 90 games. I thought the Padres were, if I had to put money down, if I had to make a bet, I would have put it on the Padres because I thought that was going to be the team that the Dodgers needed to worry about. And turns out that's not the case. The Padres are 10 games below 500. I didn't think the Dodgers would be this good. Again, I knew they'd make the playoffs, but as a potential wild card team, but I don't know. They're on pace to, I think, win 95, 96, second best record in the National League. I wouldn't have thought that. I had my bold prediction, but personally, I was expecting anywhere between 87 and 90 wins. So it's been crazy. And I think it just goes to show that Dave Roberts, once again, is one of the more underrated managers in all of baseball. I know he gets so much flack, but I think we've talked about this in the past. If I was the manager last year, I think I could have managed that team to 100 wins. But if you were to take Bob Melvin, make him the Dodgers manager this year, and you were to make Dave Roberts the Padres manager, I would put a lot of money down that both those records would be completely different than they are right now. So Dave Roberts has done a hell of a job this season. In my opinion, I think it's been the best job he's done since coming to the Dodgers in 2016.
Can they beat the Braves?
TJ, in baseball, anything can happen. And hey, if you get hot over a couple game stretch, will they? I'm leaning a little no, but that's the beauty of the postseason. We've seen it so many times. I mean, we saw it in 2019 with that Nationals team. Were they the best team in baseball? No, they weren't. And the team they placed in the World Series, 147, Lyle, 147, just did not work out. So again, anything can happen in a series. I'm just glad that if the Dodgers face the Braves, it's going to be in the NLCS. Luckily, so at least it's a 7-game sample size, because if it was like a 3-game or that 5-gamer, then I would really hate the chances. But hey, anything can happen, TJ. I'm hopeful.
See, with the Dodgers, it's been more of a linear progression upwards this season, where at the start of the year, you didn't know. And then, okay, April kind of plays itself out. And I think it's hard to judge a season based off what happens in April for any team. But then since then, they've kind of just hit the ground running, where from our side, I mean, talk about a freaking roller coaster of a season, because these guys could not get above 500 to save their lives until after the All-Star break. Like we were talking about a little bit ago, how, when Julio got going, they finally got going. But the best metaphor I can use here, and I know TJ will double up with me on this, is they were just stuck in neutral for what felt like the entire first half of the season. They couldn't get it going. And then finally, all of a sudden, they hit the acceleration and they took off, where you didn't have to deal with that as a Dodger fan, which is probably nice, but I'm happy they're at where they're at right now, but man, it took a long time for where we were at the start of the season, where we thought, oh, this team probably has a shot to compete for the West. At the very least, they feel like a lock for a wild card spot. Didn't feel like that forever. Right now, it feels a little bit more secure, but it took some time.
And think about this, Blake. Heading up to the trade deadline for the Mariners, and for all your Dodger listeners, just some perspective. Like, the Mariners are in playoff position right now, but I'm thinking trade deadline eve. They're playing in Arizona. They've split the first 2 games of a 3-game series with the Diamondbacks. And from everything we heard from Jerry DiPoto about their strategy at the trade deadline, whether they were going to sell off the Reynolds, trade Teoscar Hernandez, which was a popular one, maybe get rid of Eugenio Suarez or Ty France as well, a lot of it hinged on the outcome of that 3rd game against the Diamondbacks. If they lost, they might have gone into more of a full sell mode instead of just selling off Paul Sewald to bring more depth in on their bench and get more bats in the lineup, which has turned out to be a major success. But if they had lost that 3rd game in Arizona, they very well could have shipped away Teoscar Hernandez, traded Eugenio Suarez or Ty France or pretty much anyone else on the roster they felt like was expendable and could have brought back significant return. That's how that's how close and near to 500 this team was, that it almost didn't happen if one bounce didn't go their way, but it ended up happening. And now here the Mariners sit in playoff position with 16 games to go. It's
From watching from my end, it's crazy because I remember, especially watching last year, where it was like, and I think even Lyle was saying, like, they're kind of peaking 1 year too early. Like, next year's like the year where it's kind of going to come into place. And I remember thinking earlier in the year, like, what the hell is going on here? Like, this team should be better than they were last year. And I remember they were struggling, and then, yeah, like you said, at the deadline, there was like Teoscar Hernandez rumors, and I think I even tweeted out saying, yeah, if that's the case, the Dodgers need to be all over that, because I will gladly take him here. And then slowly in August, it's like you kind of check the standings every night, and it's like, okay, the Mariners are 7.5 out, and then it's kind of like, okay, they're 6.5 out. And then all of a sudden, it's like, holy crap, the Mariners are in the division. And all of a sudden, like, how did this even go down? And it's crazy. And one of the things I wanted to ask you guys about this was, because last year, I mean, I feel like last year's always going to kind of hold a special place in your guys' hearts, because, like, that's the first year you actually saw them make the playoffs, like, essentially in your lifetime. But now that this year, I guess there's like more expectations. What is kind of like the vibes like, especially now around the stadium, around the fan base, that not only is it like, okay, we're kind of in the wild card hunt, it's like, no, you're competing for a division. Like, every game matters so much more, because, like I said, for the Dodgers this weekend, it's like, okay, play 3 games, on to the next trip. Like, I don't even know who the Dodgers are playing after the Mariners. But for you guys, it's like, no, like, every game, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's like monumental. It's must win. So what is it like being a Mariners fan, especially with these, important, crucial games this late in September, which is a rarity for you guys?
Oh, it's nerve-wracking, especially when you look at what comes up on their schedule, because they've got the Dodgers, then they've got 3 against the A's, and their last 10 are brutal. They are all against the Rangers and the Astros. All of it. And this is a team that, yeah, they're fighting for an AL West spot, but they're also just trying to get into the playoffs, period, because the fight for that last wild card spot is really close between them, the Rangers, and the Blue Jays. So these are going to be nerve-wracking games, but just being around the ballpark as a whole, there's been way more electricity this year. I mean, there's more people at games, especially on weekdays in general. Like, the weekday attendances are way up. I think people are more into it now than they ever have been. People are more invested than they ever have been. And then as a result of that, when they lose, people are more on edge than they've ever been, which I guess is the price that comes with trying to be a successful ball club.
People, I would say, online, though, are as pessimistic as ever.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
But what else is new?
Classic. So yeah, it's going to be a huge series. So guys, looking right now, we kind of talked about the pitching matchups ahead of the show. We got some good ones. We got some good matchups. As of right now, I don't think the Dodgers have a starter listed for Sunday. I will say, I was telling this to the guys before the show. Might be Gavin Stone, might be Ryan Pepio, but Friday, Saturday, Sunday, guys, what do you think the key is for the Mariners in these 3 games to take a lead against the Dodgers, hold the lead, come out with either a sweep or taking 2 out of 3? What do you think the biggest thing the Mariners need to do is against the Dodgers?
Well, they got to pitch, because when they over this past road trip since the start of September, it hasn't been great. They went 3-7 on the road trip, came home, took 2 or 3 against the Angels. But the pitching was really up and down over that stretch. And there's a couple of things. The starters were not getting deep enough into games, and the bullpen was struggling because they were being overused. And now that they finally have a home off day, you hope those guys are a little bit rested. I know a lot of guys are tired here at the end of the season, but as Lyle mentioned, the final stretch of the season is so important that they're going to need all of these guys to be healthy and to be good to go. Because, Blake, I don't know how the Dodgers are set up, but the Mariners have no reinforcements left. There's nothing left really in the minor leagues that they can call up for a start or somebody they actually could rely upon in the bullpen. Actually, there is one, Perlander Barroa, but we don't know why he's not on the roster right now. We couldn't tell you. He probably should be. So in the end, it starts and ends with the Mariners pitching and then Julio Rodriguez as well. I think those would be the two things. If Julio comes out and has a 3 home run weekend, I'd like the Mariners' chances.
I think Friday's pitching matchup is going to be really good because you've got Bobby Miller, who throws incredibly hard, does not give up a lot of hard contact. And then he's going to go against George Kirby, who fills up the strike zone, sits in the upper 90s, and he's going to be motivated after that last start where obviously he was kind of at the center of baseball last weekend for those comments he had, where, yeah, it's two good pitchers that are going to go neck and neck here on Friday. So I think Friday's matchup is going to be a bunch of fun. I certainly wouldn't be shocked if that one's low scoring, but yeah, I think for the Mariners, it's going to be what they've relied on all year. They're going to have to pitch and the bullpen's going to have to hold it down if they want to come away with a series win, because Dodgers can certainly hit. It's not going to be a pushover series by any stretch. And this is how they've won games all season.
And Blake, these are the games that George Kirby really shines in. I mentioned it earlier. He got a ton of flack for his comments last week, but in big games at home under the lights, this dude performs. Think back to earlier in the season, Felix Hernandez is getting his number retired in center field that night against the Orioles, who have the best record in the American League. And what does George Kirby do? He goes out there and pitches the best game of his career, throws 9 shutout innings on barely over 100 pitches. The Orioles, I think, might have had 2 hard hit balls all night. It was just ridiculous, the performance he had on the mound. And I wouldn't be shocked if we see something similar today when this episode comes out.
TJ, You're leaving out one very important piece of that start. They lost on Felix Hernandez night.
Yes,
in perfect Felix Hernandez fashion, while they honored him, put him in the Mariners Hall of Fame, they lose 1-0 in extra innings when their starter goes 9 shutout.
Well,
incredible.
Yeah.
Sad.
Welcome to Mariners fandom, Blake.
I will say, I don't know if I've ever seen Clayton Kershaw pitch live, who's supposed to go Saturday. So I am excited for that, just as a baseball fan. I was trying to think if we ever all saw him in Arizona. Maybe we did. I don't have any memory of seeing him. So I think, to my knowledge, this is the first time I'll ever see him live, which will be cool.
Yeah, I can't remember if we saw him in Arizona, so I will say this, if there are any Mariners fans that are listening, or even Dodgers fans that are making the trip, like, if you're going to go to any game this series, go on Saturday, just because it could be the very last time you ever see Clayton Kershaw pitch in a Major League game, because every year, he says this might be the year. I think whenever he does retire, he's not going to do a retirement tour. He's just going to retire at the end of the offseason. And he is kind of worn out this year. And he has talked about how he really wants to be there for his family. So, like, for you, Lyle, like I said, if you're going on, especially on Saturday, unless it's a Mariners-Dodgers World Series, which I'd be down for that, this is probably going to be, in my opinion, the last time you ever get to see him pitch in person. So for those that are going to be at the game on Saturday, try to enjoy it, try to take it all in, because if that is the case, you get one final chance to see one of the greatest to ever do it.
It's been mostly shoulder stuff for him this year, right?
No one even really knows. It's been the weirdest thing, because Kershaw, I want to say at the end of June, he left to start, and they said it was like something shoulder related. He said he's fine. It's going to be a couple days. Then it became a couple weeks. Then it became after the All-Star break. Then it became August. And now Kershaw, he's walking guys at a higher rate than he's ever walked in his career. He had a 5-walk outing the other day. His velo is down, I think, 3 ticks now. He's only pumping 88 miles an hour. He's saying, my shoulder feels fine. I'm feeling all good. The Dodgers have kind of said the opposite. They've kind of said he's not 100%, but if he's able to pitch, he's going to pitch. And then they pushed him pretty much essentially a week to make the start in Seattle on Saturday, when Clayton Kershaw said about a week ago, I don't want to take time off. I want to go every 5th day. I think taking time off would make it worse. So supposedly his shoulder's fine, but when you're all of a sudden down 3 miles per hour in velocity on all of your pitches, and a guy like Kershaw, who if he walks 2 in a start, that's considered a bad outing, he's walking 5. Something's not right. So I guess we'll see, because it's been some time since we saw him last. So if you're at the game, keep an eye on the radar gun. And if it's anything below 90, Yeah, the Mariners might be they might be feasting if that's the case.
That actually makes for a good transition here while we're talking about Kershaw, because obviously one of the downsides for the Dodgers this year is they've taken some hits in their rotation. And the
Yeah.
news earlier or a couple weeks ago that they're not going to get Walker Buehler back this year obviously hurts, because I think that was somebody they were definitely going to rely on, especially if he was healthy for the postseason. And I think it's fair to say, right, that Kershaw and Bobby Miller in a playoff series would start games 1 and 2, but
Yeah.
who in the world's starting game 3?
That is a great question, a question on every Dodger fan's mind. As of right now, it might be Ryan Pepiot, because that's the state of the Dodgers rotation. The dude's made like 4 starts this year, but I don't know if I want Lance Lynn and his 42 home runs he's allowed this year on the mound in a career. If the Dodgers have like a 2-0 series lead, maybe I'd be a little more lenient. But if it's a 1-1 series, or if the Dodgers for some reason are down 0-2, yeah, you cannot send Lance Lynn out there. So as of right now, if I had to guess, it honestly might be Ryan Pepiot, which, yikes. That's why if anything happens to Clayton Kershaw, oh boy, you're sending a rookie and Bobby Miller out there, you're sending a rookie and Ryan Pepiot, and then Lance Lynn with the highest home run rate in baseball. Could get bad.
That's a record, right? 42?
If it's not a record, he's getting close to it, because goodness gracious.
That'd be my old buddy Ryan Pepiot pitching in that series. Which,
Yeah.
hey, I'll instill my confidence in him. If any Inside the Ravine listeners, or actually any Marine Layer Pod listeners too, want a little quick story, because I know you guys had Pepiot on the show earlier in the year. I'm not going to go full Josh here and tell novel the Cape League story.
I was about to say,
but
Lyle's going to do his best to replace
Spark
Josh
notes
on
it.
this episode right here. So
not
go
going to
ahead,
do
Doc.
a full Josh story. But I was also in the Cape League, and not with Josh, different team. Ryan Pepiot was with the team that I broadcasted games for, and we got to know each other pretty well over that summer. And then I ran into him too, like a year later, where we got to catch up for, I don't know, half hour or so. It was at a hockey game. And this will be the first time I've seen him in, like 3 or 4 years. So I'm excited to see him pitch. I'm excited to see him just in person in general. But yeah, kind of an old funny story. Like, Pepiot and I know each other, and if he's pitching in the playoffs for the Dodgers, I'll be excited to watch him.
Yeah, when we talked to Pepiot, but we were just, shooting it before we actually hit record, and I brought out to him, I was like, hey, you might know, like, one of our friends. And he's like, oh, yeah. And he's like, yeah, he was in Hyannis when you were there. And he goes, who was it? And I was like, oh, yeah, our buddy's Lyle. And he goes, oh, you know Lyle Goldstein? And we were like, oh, yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah, that kid was awesome. And then he brought up the whole thing, like, yeah, last time I saw him was at a hockey game. I guess we were sitting in the same section.
Yeah.
So Ryan Pepiot, good guy. He remembers Lyle. So there you go, Mariners fans. Root for Ryan Pepiot to shove, because he's a good guy.
He can shove, and then the Mariners can win like 2-0 or something. I don't know.
There you
Late in
go.
the game.
There you go.
Is Bobby Miller the only thing that's really gone right in the Dodgers rotation this year? Because on top of all of this injury news, then you have the Julio Urias story come out, and he might not pitch in baseball again.
Yeah.
Talk about stacking on things that could possibly go wrong with one single rotation. Oh, by the way, and still maybe win 100 games. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, there might be a KBO team that has 2 former Dodgers pitchers in the rotation next year, so stay tuned for that. But yeah, Bobby Miller, I mean, he's probably, like, without Bobby Miller, I don't know where the Dodgers rotation would be, because this was a guy that they were expecting to contribute maybe in the second half at some point, but they called on him early, and he's been, you look at his numbers, and he's not going to win Rookie of the Year or anything like that. They're probably not going to blow you away, but for a guy that didn't have much experience A level, like, those are numbers that are really, really good. So yeah, Bobby Miller, if he didn't have the season he's been having, boy, I couldn't tell you where the Dodgers starting rotation would be at this point, because they would not be in a good spot.
I think this is a pretty good transition, because the guy we'll talk about next is not going to pitch in a rotation next year, but in 2025, whether he still be under contract, he very well may be good enough to go in a major league rotation. I believe this podcast represent the 2 favorites in the Shohei
Yes.
Ohtani sweepstakes. Now, again, he's not going to pitch next year. He's going to get Tommy John in the offseason. I don't know what Shohei's up to now. He's just sat out the entire Mariners-Angels series and ruined our entire plan to court him to Seattle that series. So
upset.
we're gonna make up for some lost time by having yet another conversation about him here on this crossover episode. So Blake, I mean, where are you sitting on this whole Shohei discussion? Like, how's it going over in Dodgerland right now?
I'm glad you brought it up because, yeah, this is one of the talking points that I wanted us to get to during the show because I also agree. I mean, for me, I mean, nobody knows what the heck's going on in this guy's head. But as of right now, I think it's between two teams. I know that there was that athletic report, I think, about a week ago that said, oh, he won't mind playing on the East Coast. He just wants to play for a winner. I still don't buy that. I still think he wants to stay on the West Coast. And I think it still is those teams that he was interested in, 5 or 6 years ago. And I think it's down to the Dodgers and Mariners. At that point, whatever his preference is, that'll be that. But yeah, this whole injury kind of made things a little more interesting because all of a sudden now he might not be pitching in 2024, it might not be until 2025. The Dodgers, they can afford anyone. They can afford to give him whatever that he wants. If he wants a blank check, Andrew Friedman will say, here you go. So I do think their chances took a bit of a hit just because I don't think they'd be willing to. I wouldn't be shocked if the Dodgers try to pull what they did with Bryce Harper when I think they offered him, I want to say it was like a 4-year, $180 million contract. I wouldn't be shocked if they pitched that to Shohei and said, here's 4 for 180. We'll have an opt out after like 2025 or 2026 if you want to opt out and test the waters again. So maybe they go that direction. But yeah, I still think the Dodgers are in it. I think they want him badly in the middle of that lineup, but then on the mound. And every Dodgers fan, they want him bad. I haven't quite seen the level of commitment that Mariners fans have pulled out yet for him just yet. Mainly because Dodgers fans might be a little selfish and just assume that he's going to be coming. So we might have to get to work in the offseason. But yeah, I think, again, I don't know what Shohei's thinking, but obviously you have the whole Seattle thing where I think what I heard he like lives there in the offseason, something like that. They were one of the favorites to sign him. Is that true that he lives there in the offseason?
So I don't think he lives there, but he does train at Driveline all offseason. He spends a lot of time in Seattle in the offseason. So he's certainly familiar with the area, and his translator apparently grew up a Mariners fan, and I think his translator is one of his closest friends. So there, combined with all the chants that happened at the All-Star game, and obviously he said he was pretty blown away and appreciative of all that stuff. So like there's reasons to believe that they could be linked there, not to mention the fact that they were essentially the runner-up the first time, just behind the Angels. So like there's a lot of Mariners fans out there that just say, oh, they're not going to sign him. It's not going to happen. Ownership won't spend the money. Like, don't even put the idea in your head. I'm kind of like, yeah, I wouldn't go that far. Do I think they're a favorite over the Dodgers? No. Do I think they have a shot? I 100% do. I'm wearing the perfect shirt for this podcast, by the way. I come to Seattle shirt. Yes. I figured it was perfect. I got it this week, but yeah, I think there's a shot.
Yeah, I'd go like right now. I think it's like, I want to say 60-40 in favor of the Dodgers, just barely. Just because, again, clearly he was interested in the Mariners the first time around. And if the Mariners can show that they're capable of winning this postseason especially, which kind of sucks for the Mariners, it's like the Dodgers have already proven they could win. Like, they could get bounced in the NLDS, and it's like, okay, they're still winners. But if the Mariners, like, just go on a run, make it to the World Series, then they can just go to Shohei and be like, hey, Shohei, we made it to the World Series. We came up just short. Guess who that missing piece could be? It could be you. So it's a big postseason run for the Mariners, I think, because of that as well.
The biggest thing that they can pitch him to differentiate themselves from the Dodgers to say, like, the Dodgers have made the playoffs now every year for over a decade, and deep runs, elite rosters, unlimited pockets. They will win with him. They will win without him. But Jerry DiPoto and John Stanton go to Shohei Ohtani and say, hey, listen, see, there's no World Series banners up there, but you go win one and you're immortalized. You will, I don't think this is a hot take. You will overtake all of the other franchise legends this franchise has had. You will become the guy in the city that, like, it'll be bigger than the Seahawks winning a championship. I guarantee that. Like, I don't know. I don't think that's a hot take to you, Lyle, either. If they win a World Series because of Shohei Ohtani, like, it will be the biggest moment in Seattle sports history. And you have the option here, Shohei, to stamp your name on that and be one of the catalysts behind it.
Junior will always be Junior, but if Shohei comes to Seattle and wins a World Series, going forward for the rest of the time, I mean, when people think about the Mariners legends, the two guys that are going to pop into their heads, it's going to be Shohei and it's going to be Julio, because they'll have changed baseball in this city by bringing it the first world title. Not that Shohei won't be forever loved in LA if he goes and wins a couple of titles there, but it's like, to your point, where the Dodgers have won World Series and historically are a very successful franchise, the Mariners aren't. So that, like you said, that is a sales pitch that they can make.
My only
Yeah.
drawback with the Shohei Ohtani sweepstakes and worry of the Mariners' ability to sign him is that the Mariners are not really a team that gets in bidding wars. And Shohei Ohtani is the type of player that would require a bidding war. I think it's been well documented that people aren't sure if he's going to take the highest number, and he might not. But if it does come down to a bidding war, the problem is we don't think the Mariners would engage in a bidding war that would just go way over the price. The Dodgers, as you mentioned, would have no issue with that. They would do whatever is necessary to sign him. The Mariners would pay market rate, which is very high for Shohei. But perhaps if he's looking for the highest number, wouldn't be as high as he wants.
Here's my quick take on that before we turn it back over to Blake, because my opinion on that differs a little bit. Usually they don't get in bidding wars. For him, I think they might change their philosophy a little bit because he is so different than any other free agent ever. I think with him, they may change their philosophy because the contract will pay for itself.
My thing with Shohei, and I don't know if this is a hot take for him, I don't think it's going to come down to who the highest bidder is going to be. I think right now, Shohei has a preference. What that is, I don't think any of us actually know. Whether it's, again, the reason I like the Dodgers so much is just because I don't know where he lives, but he doesn't have to move. So is his preference staying there? Is his preference, again, like what you pitched about all the things Seattle has to offer? I don't think, I mean, maybe it does, but I don't think 600 million makes any difference compared to let's say the Mets and Steve Cohen opens up his wall and says, here's 600 million, which he's probably going to do. For Shohei, I don't think that makes any difference than if the Mariners offer 400 million. I think if he wants to go to the Mariners, he'll gladly take his 400 million. He might ask for about 5% ownership in the team if that's the case, but I don't think money is going to be what gets it done for Shohei. I think whatever his top priority is, that's going to be what gets it done. And again, he'll still sign a massive contract, but I don't think at the end of the day, it's just going to be who can offer him the most. It's just going to be what teams does he want to go and what can they present him the best, which again, I think it's the Dodgers Mariners. I think those are the only two. I see no chance in hell he goes back to the Angels. There's just absolutely no way. And I just can't imagine the Padres being able to afford it. And I can't imagine him going to like the team like the Cubs or, some of those other ones. So yeah, we don't know. Nobody knows what Shohei's thinking, but it just seems like Dodgers Mariners, those are like the two only realistic scenarios in this situation.
What do you think his contract looks like?
It's just tough now because of this whole pitching arm injury. Before that, I would have been fine with anything. I would have been fine with 10 years, 60 million, 12 years, or 10 years, 600 million, 60 million a year. Right now, again, it just depends on what he's willing to do. I still think he gets at least 400 million. It's just a matter of is a team willing? Just because, again, I do understand, you talked about you don't need him to pitch next year. You do have to take into account, what if for some reason he comes back in 2025 and he's just not that great of a pitcher anymore? That's a lot of money for a guy that only DHs. So I would be a little hesitant. But then at the end of the day, none of it's my money. And if you can get 2 or 3 prime years of Shohei, I'm all for it. So I think he still surpasses 400 million. I don't think he's going to get that 600 number that I think we were all expecting him to still get.
I have one terrifying thought to put into everybody's heads as Blake was just rattling off teams he could or could not go to. If he were to go anywhere on the East Coast, I don't think it's the state of New York. This might be a hot take, but if he was going to go anywhere on the East Coast, what if it was the Braves? I mean, my goodness.
No, Lyle, I do not speak this into existence. I do not need the Jeff Passan tweet that Shohei Ohtani has agreed to a 14-year, $140 million contract with the Atlanta Braves, with 1% going to the Atlanta Braves Foundation. I do not need this. They did it with Ronald Acuna Jr., which we said that day 5 years ago. What is he doing? They did it with Ozzy Albies. They did it with all these guys. No, if Shohei Ohtani goes to the Braves and it's anything under 500 million, there needs to be an MLB investigation. There needs to be some book and movie rights deal. Mike Rizemba needs to make a video on this, because then there is something going on behind the scenes and under the table that we do not know about that needs to be exposed.
So I think that's your nightmare, Blake. I think a nightmare on our side, which I think this team will be bidding for him, is if he goes to the Texas Rangers. They're going to open their checkbook and sign him. They're going to offer him something. They're going to offer him a good chunk of change. They were not hesitant to sign both Marcus Semien and Corey Seager in one offseason. And they've said before they like spending money, and they're very willing to go out and sign free agents to make their roster better. That sounds like that would be an absolute worst case disaster scenario for the Mariners front office, for Mariners fans, for everything, because that's the one team I just think he absolutely cannot sign with.
I just don't know how much more money the Rangers can possibly spend, though, because after they paid Semien and Seager and spent all of the money on the pitchers this past winter, like how much more do they have before they go way over the luxury tax?
As you mentioned, it pays for itself.
It does pay for itself. I'm just, God, I just have now that image just burned into my head of how the Braves all these years have been handing out these team-friendly contracts, and what if behind closed doors it was all like a ploy to get Shohei to sign some mega deal and just complete that team, which would be a nightmare for really all of baseball. Yeah.
And so they've just won now their sixth straight National League East title, and most of their core is not even halfway through their contracts.
It's crazy.
It's like the Jesse Pinkman thing. He can't keep getting away with this because like every contract, it's just like, no, like I no. I don't get it.
Okay, I think we've got 2 segments here to do before we wrap this thing up. And this is something out of our book and from our world, which Blake wanted to stay on for. So he said, yes, stay on. These are 2 fun segments that TJ and I do at the end of all our Friday shows, at least during the season. It's our Friday shows, where the first thing we do, we'll present it here, is we give out what we call a Russell Wilson Umpire of the Week. Now, Dodger fans might be sitting there thinking, what in the world does that mean? So we give out an award to an umpire who just infamously messes up over the course of a week in games. Now, it could be one of 3 things. You're not seeing over the middle, you're not letting plays develop, or you're just downright insufferable, which probably has to do with ejections or things of that sort. 3 things that Russell Wilson seems to kind of fit the mold of. And if you're a Dodger fan listening to this, you're probably thinking to yourself, oh, this is a little bit petty. And our answer to that would be, it is. Yet here
how's that trade working out for you guys?
Oh, it's been unreal. Just absolutely unreal. So that's the namesake behind the award. And TJ said this week there was one guy that he just had to hand the award to.
Yeah, Bill Miller, congratulations. It was last week's Pirates-Braves game. What day was this? It was last Sunday. So overall, it wasn't a bad game for Bill Miller, but he's on here to a quote he had. Cabrian Hayes, who it was a 3-1 count on him, and there was a pitch called outside by 6 inches. Called a strike on a 3-1 count, and the count goes back to 3-2. So Cabrian Hayes, after this, goes on Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, and said this: some umpires really don't care. 3-1 call, not even close. I hold him accountable after the game, walking off the field, and his response is, shrug shoulders, I gave you a chance to hit a home run. That tells me you don't care at all. No accountability. Bring the ABS, please, at MLB. This is a man that we respect, standing up to the accountability of umpires.
Unreal. What is going on? So he fits the qualifications here of, right, he doesn't see over the middle for sure, and then he was insufferable. So he hits 2 of the 3 boxes 100%. Which, what is that quote? I gave you a chance to hit a home run? Like, when?
Like, dude, you messed up. Say, sorry, bud, I missed a call. Won't happen again. It's like, no, actually, that's your problem that I missed a call.
Unreal.
They should, we talk about relegation in sports like the Premier League. There should actually be a relegation system for umpires,
Yes.
Like,
maybe that's
need some incentive for guys like Angel Hernandez not to suck.
Well, I was going to say, maybe Angel Hernandez was relegated for 2/3 of the season because he just wasn't umping games almost all year. Maybe that was their little way of punishing him.
You say that, but C.B. Buckner is still alive and well.
Yeah, he is. Blake, did you have one you wanted to bring in too? I know you said there was a couple this week that kind of grinded your gears.
So there were a couple bad calls. I didn't have too much time to go too in depth on these guys, so I actually wanted to pose this to you guys. And I don't know if you guys have talked about this on the show before, but I know we talk about, the automated strike zone and how we need that yesterday when it comes to Major League Baseball. But unfortunately, Rob Manfred is just dumb, and that's probably not going to happen anytime soon. I want to get your thoughts on this. What if, although we don't implement that just yet, we keep the umpires, unfortunately, but every manager gets a challenge. Just like you get a normal challenge, if you win your challenge, bad call, you can use your challenge. It should be like a 10-second review because You have the technology to see it. You get it right, you keep your call, and you can use it as many times as you want until there's one that you get wrong. With us not getting the actual, again, automated strike zone anytime soon, would you guys be in favor of that? Every manager gets to challenge a call and essentially just keep it until you eventually mess one up and you get it wrong and then you lose it for the game?
I think the challenge system's the best system. They use it in AAA, and I think every team gets 3 challenges. So I think it's the perfect amount. If you get a challenge right, I believe you keep your challenge, so you don't have to worry about that. But it's super quick. They just look upstairs, correct, yes, no, okay, done. But it also is easier because it allows the umpires to continue doing their job behind home plate and stay engaged in the game. And not if the system is offline for some reason. Oh yeah, by the way, you got to ump a game and you haven't really been paying attention because you've just been listening in your ear. So I think that's honestly the best system. I think it's the best of both worlds. And you get a mix of what umpires want and what the public wants, which is the only way this actually gets done because the umpires have a union that you need to get to agree to all of this.
I've been to a couple AAA games this year, and the way they formatted it is half the week on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, they use the automated strike zone. And then Friday, Saturday, Sunday, they've been using the challenge system. I was at a game where they were using the challenge system. I thought it was awesome because essentially a guy taps his helmet or points his finger in the air saying he wants to challenge a call. And then they go up to the video board and they do the replay almost the way they do in tennis, where if a player challenges a line call, they'll go to the technology and it shows exactly where the ball hits. And it takes just a few seconds. And that's what they do at these minor league games too. And I saw it. I was like, this is pretty flawless. You could implement this in the majors right now. In fact, they had it at the Futures game. During the Futures game when we saw it in Seattle this year, we were like, so it's in big league ballparks. Just do it right now. I'm all for the challenge system.
Yeah, so that's my thing. I didn't want to single out a single umpire because there's actually been a couple this week, but I wanted to bring that up because I'm in favor of that because I still think I do like having the human element of an umpire actually behind home plate, but give a couple challenges because again, there are some just egregious calls that just are, my God, what are we doing here? Angel Hernandez.
Yeah, they're pretty bad. And there's some umpires that have been highlighted quite a few times on our segment that I think are going to make our Mount Rushmore at the end of the year. We might have to go back in and figure. I wish we had a better way of keep track of it so we don't actually have to re-listen to every single episode we did. But
I was going to say, I keep all my notes. I could probably just go back and look at the notes we had to see how many times each guy's received it. I was going to say, that's one thing we didn't do a good job of this year is we should have been keeping track of how many times we gave each umpire the award. But I think that's going to be an off-season project to actually go back and see, okay, he got it this many times versus umpire X got it this many times. Yeah, because next year we're going to be keeping track of this.
Yeah, we need a winner. We need a gold medal for worst umpire of the year via the Marine Layer podcast. So that's fun. Okay, Blake, let's get to our last segment that we like to do on our shows, and let's get to Speak Your Mind. So for all the Inside the Ravine listeners, Speak Your Mind is not necessarily baseball related. You can talk about pretty much whatever you want to do. Lau and I came up with this segment as a reason to talk about other things that we find interesting throughout the week in pop culture and other sports and food and movies and really whatever. So the floor is really open. Blake, do you have anything to speak your mind about?
So this one was hard. When you guys texted me about this, I asked my girlfriend, I was like, what can I potentially do here? And between the two of us, we couldn't think of anything. I did think of one potential thing, but it involves a certain music artist that is currently just all over the place right now touring that everyone is obsessed with. And I just wanted to maybe talk about that. But then she brought up, maybe you have listeners that are huge fans, so you don't want to really tick them off. So
we've talked about that on Speak Your Mind.
So maybe I wanted to pump the brakes just a little and hold that one back. Because again, I don't want to upset any listeners out there who may be fans of a certain someone. So I'll let you.
She might be casually hanging out with an NFL tight end.
Yeah, she supposedly. Which hey,
they have each other's phone numbers. Ooh.
Said NFL tight end, please get help. Get out of there. unless you want an album dropped in 2026. Get out of there. So I will refrain from that one. I will keep it in baseball. I kind of hinted and teased this earlier when it comes to this because I wanted to speak my mind to Mariners fans about the MVP race going on in the National League. Again, in the American League, it's probably going to be Shohei, but Corey Seager, you can make the case for Julio Rodriguez. You can make the case for they're all having great seasons. I don't know where you guys stand on this, but I cannot believe that we are in 2023 and we are using stolen bases as the metric as to why a player should win most valuable player. I get it. It hasn't been done in ever what Ronald Acuna is doing. But do you guys remember, you may have to go back a bit. Do you guys remember this offseason when they made the bases larger? Do you guys remember when they made it easier to steal bases? Because I sure do. They made it easier to steal bases, as you can see across baseball. When you look at all of the numbers across the board, Mookie Betts clears in home runs, WRC+, OPS, WAR, all the main categories. Now, Ronald Acuna does have a higher batting average, guys. His batting average is higher, so I know the old school voters, they might really like that. But between all of the numbers I talked about for Mookie Betts, TJ, we talked about earlier, Baseball Savant, how they have these advanced metrics. Well, you look at the advanced metrics, batting run value, both Mookie and Acuna, 100th percentile. They're both really good. Base running value, TJ, you might have looked it up. Lyle, I know you're great when it comes to trivia. Would you like to take a guess as to where Mookie and Acuna both come out in the percentile rankings when it comes to base running value?
I don't know how much time I've dug into this stat. Are they 1 and 2?
They are not 1 and 2. They're actually far off from being 1 and 2.
I'll say Mookie's pretty average this year on the base paths, according to
So
that.
they're like toward the bottom of the league, it sounds like.
As of right now, towards the end of the season, both Mookie and Ronald Acuna are 57th percentile when it comes to base running value. So although Ronald Acuna has so many stolen bases, they are providing equal value when it comes to their base running value. Then when you look at fielding value, Mookie Betts is at 44. Ronald Acuna is at 29 because, like I mentioned, Mookie Betts, he's playing Gold Glove defense in right field. He's playing Gold Glove defense at second base, and he's playing Gold Glove defense at shortstop. I don't know how you can look at all these things presented and say that Ronald Acuna deserves to win MVP. I mean, at what point are we saying stolen bases is the reason a guy should win MVP? Because if that's the case, D. Gordon deserved a lot of more MVP votes about 6 or 7 years ago when he was playing for the Dodgers. He deserved a lot more. So I wanted to speak my mind because, again, home runs, OPS+, WRC+, OPS, everything except batting average. Acuna has the batting average. I don't know how you can say Mookie Betts is not the MVP.
I'm glad you brought it up, Blake, and laid it out. Like I was an Acuna MVP guy, and I still think he's going to win it because he plays on the best team in the National League.
Yeah,
he's gotten the most press this year, and the Braves. He leads a Braves lineup, which might be one of the 10 best lineups ever.
Yeah.
Is that a hot take? Like that's a pretty impressive feat right there. But what Mookie Betts is doing on an individual basis is more impressive. I do think it's funny when we compare the two, base running and fielding wise, because we generally think of them as great athletes. They're fast and they're versatile. And then Baseball Savant's like, yeah, I don't think so.
It's funny. I could have been swayed either way on this, and that's what I was going to say at the end of your little explanation there. But I think you sold me on the MVP thing because again, we've been meaning to talk about this on one of our MLB wraparound segments on our podcast, which is another segment we often do. But we'd had other things to talk about, so it kept getting pushed down the road a little bit, and now we've essentially uncovered it here. Yeah, I think you made a pretty good sales pitch for Mookie Betts. I mean, I would have guessed it was going to be Acuna, and maybe it still will be at the end of the year. But when you lay out the numbers, it is Mookie's. And Mookie probably means more to the Dodgers than Acuna means to the Braves. And that's probably a toss-up just because they're both so good. But because the Braves offense is so lethal that they could probably sustain losing Acuna if they had to, where I don't think the Dodgers could sustain losing Mookie Betts in that lineup.
Hey, the Braves did win a World Series without Ronald Acuna.
They did.
So there you go.
Adam Duvall in center field.
Yeah, all that stuff. Quick thing for you guys, though. Let's just say you're given an MVP vote right now. What are the 3 things? Like, you could only look at 3 things for a player's resume. What 3 things would you guys choose to look at?
Like 3 stats?
Yeah, like 3. It could be any stat out there.
I think for me, it'd be WAR, WRC+, outs above average.
Yeah, I would agree with it's probably those 3. It's just not perfect. Like those stats aren't perfect. Like outs above average isn't a perfect defensive stats. Defensive stats are just so hard to value because there's not a enormous sample. You get 3, like an outfielder gets 3, maybe 3 attempts a game, maybe on defense, depending on the day. And every situation is different. So that's kind of hard to judge. But I would say those 3, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with the first two. Then yes, some sort of defensive metric or something like that. I think easily taking a look at as well.
So my speak your mind this week, not baseball related. I do have to say though, after watching Monday Night Football, guys, the NFL script writers could not have done a better job kicking off this 2023 season. I mean, let's give a round of applause to the script writers of the NFL. I mean,
So
the
good.
league just keeps on delivering these storylines for us.
Is that not the most New York Jets thing ever? Where after months and months of buzz and hype around their new quarterback, they might look back one day and say, "Hey, remember that time we had Aaron Rodgers on our team for 4 plays and then he retired?"
Gosh, it's so good. The script. What do you think Aaron Rodgers thought though when he sat down in July or so and he opened up the script and he goes to page 1 of the Jets 2023 season and he sees what's at the top of the page? Do you think he was in favor of that?
Well, I don't know what startled him more, the fact that he was going to get injured to start the season or the fact he had to open on 9/11, because we know what he thinks about that. And the fact that he had to lead out of the tunnel with the American flag. And I'm just sitting here thinking, it's like, man, I would just kill to wonder what's going through his head right now.
He's probably thinking about his next dart retreat.
Well, he had a darkness retreat into the blue tent 4 plays into the game.
Yeah. We'll see. Now he's got a whole off season of darkness retreats to get to, I guess. That's just unreal that now just after all that, they're going right back to Zach Wilson. Incredible.
Who is he's just so atrocious. I cannot believe he's like, they had to keep him. He's second overall pick, but that dude sucks. I'm not afraid to say that dude sucks at football.
I mean, maybe he can get like 1% better with Aaron Rodgers mentoring him. I don't know.
Tom Brady has the chance to do
better?
the funniest thing ever.
Yeah, he does.
That's all I'm saying.
And I do feel kind of bad for Jets fans, which is kind of shocking coming from Seahawks fans, because, like, for those listening from LA still, the Mariners, the Seahawks and Jets fan bases haven't exactly been friends over the last few seasons, especially since that Jamal Adams trade. And there's been a lot of jabs on each side, and the Seahawks, of course, over that same span have just kicked the shit out of the Jets when they played them, which is even better. But the Jets actually have a great roster this year, and probably could have been a very good contender in the AFC, but not with Zach Wilson under center.
Yeah, it basically stems from the Jamal trade and then all the Tariq Woolen versus Sauce Gardner comparisons. That's just what stems all the fights on Twitter. But yeah, what a world we live in. Just week 1 and they're already right at it. Okay, I have 2 quick ones for Speak Your Mind this week. The first is, so I told Blake before we started this show, just to give him an idea of what gets brought up on these segments. The 3 things that get brought up the most seem to be Skip Bayless, Elon destroying Twitter, and NBA drama. Well, I've got a skip topic here this week because Shannon Sharpe is just a week or 2 into his new gig at ESPN, and I cannot stop laughing at how he keeps messing up names on air where he thinks he's still talking to Skip Bayless. And the second time it happened just had me dying, because the first time he did it, he said Skip. He's like, "Oh, my bad, Stephen A." The second time, which was just a couple days ago, he's like, "Here's the thing, Skip." And then he goes, no, it's Stephen A. It's like, it's Stephen A. And then he's just like freaking out on air and he's just losing it. And Stephen A is like, "It's all right, man. It's like, it was 7 years. I get it." And he's like, "Don't listen to all those Twitter trolls," meaning Shannon Sharpe definitely saw everybody that was tweeting at him saying Skip can't get out of his head. Honestly, the way Skip is living rent-free in Shannon's head probably is the way Skip would love to be going to bed and dreaming about being in LeBron's head.
Yeah.
Hey, LeBron, it's 3:04 a.m. I'm getting ready to hit the treadmill. You up?
You up, LeBron?
You up? I saw you got swept in the Western Conference Finals last year, LeBron. A true champion like Michael Jordan would be up right now, getting up jump shots in the gym, making sure that never happens again.
Yeah, he gets brought up a lot on these segments. And the second one, and TJ, this is perfect for our coffee banter. Do you see this? Do you guys see this TikTok about this pumpkin spice latte at Dunkin'?
Yes. I sent that to my girlfriend.
What, the one that has 158 grams of sugar in it?
I think it was 185. So, and then they compared it where they said it was 46 teaspoons of sugar, which filled up nearly a full cup of sugar in like a measuring cup and one of those glass measuring cups. Not to mention that they said there's no actual pumpkin in the drink. It's just all artificial. I'm looking at that thing saying, like, how could somebody buy this? Like, how could somebody possibly spend their money on that?
As someone who spent an entire summer, as Lyle knows, buying a large cookies and cream iced coffee every single day, I don't know if I have much say in the subject, besides the fact Dunkin' Donuts is amazing.
You got anything on that, Blake? You saw this?
No, but I saw that and I sent that to my girlfriend because she loves Dunkin'. We have one like in Pasadena, about 15 minutes from here. She doesn't have it too often, but whenever she does, it's a treat. But even she was like, "What person in their right mind that has any sort of just anything going on in their life would want that?" Like, I think also in the video it said it was like the equivalent of 14 like glazed donuts.
That's just
like what?
Yeah, it's like at that point I'd rather just eat like all the donuts.
Yeah, because you could
or just get a normal coffee like a normal person.
I mean, you would
with
drink
pumpkin.
That thing, you would drink that thing so fast too. You could probably finish that coffee in like 2 minutes, and then all of a sudden you just put 185 grams of sugar in your body in this course of 120 seconds. Which, what a ratio, man. Yeah, that's what I had on Speak Your Mind this week. Yeah, we always enjoy doing this because sometimes fun things and especially funny topics can get brought up. So yeah, it was fun. The three of us could do this one.
Yeah, no, that was fun. But guys, I mean, we could do this for hours and hours, but unfortunately, we only have so much time. I will say before we wrap things up, question number 1, what's your guys' series prediction for the weekend? And number 2, where can Dodgers fans listening find you guys on social media? And I will say, Dodgers fans, although you might not be a Mariners fan, you do have a reason to give these guys a follow because they are doing something very unique that other podcasts don't. So I'll let you guys take that off as well.
So prediction for the series, I'm going to say the Mariners, based on how the pitching's gone, I'm going to say the Mariners probably drop 2 of 3 in the series. But I think there's going to be a lot of runs scored in this series. This Friday night, I think, will be very telling to how the rest of the series goes. Lau, I'll let you go give a prediction here.
I think the Mariners probably have the advantage Sunday with Logan going. The Dodgers probably have the advantage Saturday with Kershaw, and Friday's going to be pretty even. At least on paper, that's how it looks to me. I would guess the Dodgers get 2 of 3 too. I hope I'm wrong on that, but objectively, that'd be my prediction. And yeah, in terms of finding us on social media, we're everywhere. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube and YouTube Shorts, Twitter, and we have been fortunate enough. We've only been doing this podcast like 8 or 9 months now, but we've been fortunate enough to get media access and credentials. We do all these fun questions with players on the field. We talk to fans. We do all this. We do more than just podcasting. We've tried to kind of grow it out that way since we started this thing. And yeah, if you guys are interested to hear players talk about their celebrity doppelgangers or building a starting 5 of a basketball roster or Mariners teammates or things along those lines, yeah, feel free to check us out and give us a follow. Oh, sorry.
By the way, at Marine Layer Pod.
Yeah, you beat me to it. There we go. At Marine Layer Pod.
Yeah, don't let the Mariners thing fool you, because again, if you like baseball stuff, definitely follow them. I'm blown away you guys said the Dodgers are going to win the series. I was going to say, I'm thinking it's a Mariners sweep or maybe Mariners 2 out of 3, just because I feel like it's going to be rocking there. The Mariners got more to play for. Dodgers might be kind of just cruising, wanting to get through the series. I got a feeling like the Mariners are going to go to work, but then again, who knows? I wouldn't be shocked with either outcome, but I think it's going to be a fun series. And again, I hope that the stadium's rocking. I hope the Dodgers do well, but at this point, since the division is locked up, I do hope the Mariners can take advantage and help their playoff push with the weekend series. Because I will feel kind of bad if the Dodgers come in and they sweep you guys, and then on Tuesday you guys are like 3 games out of like the wild card all of a sudden. I will feel a little bit bad. I'll feel better if you guys are 2 games up a week from now, but hopefully that's not the case.
Yeah, that'll make our podcast next week a little bit stressful, Blake.
just maybe a tad, Tej.
Just a little bit.
Just maybe a tad. But hey, maybe this isn't the last time we guys talk. We talk to you guys. Maybe we can get Josh on for a World Series preview, hopefully in October. But again, you guys can find them at Marine Layer Pod. And if there's any Mariners fans listening that want to follow a Dodgers fan, I don't recommend it because, man, do we tweet doomsday scenarios. But you guys can find me on Twitter at Blake H. Harris. Just let me know what you thought of the show. You don't have to follow me. But if Colton Wong goes deep this weekend, guys, I will be tweeting obnoxiously about how fantastic of a baseball player he is. And I will be letting every Mariners fan know that Colton Wong is an all-star caliber player. So
yeah, I wonder if he's going to get booed if he hits a home run. I'm very curious to see.
He might. He just might. I don't understand how the Dodgers do this. Like, it's every player that they touch turns to gold. So who knows? Maybe Colton Wong gets his homecoming this weekend in Seattle. But this was a lot of fun, guys. Again, make sure to follow them wherever you guys get your podcasts. Follow Inside the Ravine wherever you guys get your podcast. I'll wrap this up as we do every week, as what Vince Scully used to say. For TJ, Lyle, this has been Blake Harris. The three of us hope you guys enjoyed the rest of your week, wherever you may be.